All right, welcome back. Welcome back indeed. We've made it towards the tail end of reInvent Day 1. Congratulations if you've made it this far. We've got 3 more weeks of this. Rob, I know you and I have had quite an exciting day, haven't we?
Indeed, day one. It's always day one.
Exactly. If you are just stumbling upon the channel now, let's talk a little bit about what room you found your way into. This is AWS on air, so welcome. Find a seat, stay a while. We're going to be here for the next 3 weeks, bringing you live content all throughout the active days of reInvent. And we have had quite a few shows today, with more to come coming forward. We are going to be doing keynote recaps as we did this morning. Rob and I reviewed Andy Jassy's keynote. Lots of launches that we won't be able to talk again about right now because there were so many. We had a Howdy Partner session from AM Grabelny and I believe it was VMware earlier today. And then we're going to have customer driven content. We've got certification quiz show coming up right after this one. And I'm super excited about localized recaps. Those are happening throughout the night in various time zones that are ideal for customers that may not be watching here in the Americas.
Yeah, absolutely. The localized recaps are a real highlight, and I'm really glad we're doing them this year because this is the first ever digital reInvent. Any other reInvent you've ever attended has been in person in Las Vegas, and while seeing everybody in Las Vegas is a unique experience that cannot be replicated online, we do have other benefits for running the program digitally, which is that everyone gets access to it at the exact same time. And of course, in order to do that effectively, we have to have a localized rollout. So I'm really glad to see that we have all this effort put behind localization to support our global user base.
Exactly. And, while this can feel like a very exciting time of year for us, I know that for many of you in the audience, you may still be at work throughout the day and not able to catch up until later on in the evening, in which case you've found the right place because this is where we do our daily recaps here in English. So, a quick sort of lay of the land of what we got to see over the last 24 hours. I'll just kick things off. Last night we saw AWS Late Night, which is there's been a running tradition where we have one launch that happens, or the first launch of reInvent. I shouldn't say exactly one. That happens the night before the first day of festivities. And yesterday we saw quite an exciting one indeed. It was a launch in the EC2 space, and that is the introduction of Mac OS instances now from Amazon EC2. Very, very exciting, Rob. I know you and I spoke a little bit with that team. Developers are certainly very excited to be able to get their hands on AWS managed Mac devices. It feels strange to say.
Ooh, it is incredible. I mean, I thought the day would never come. I mean, it's so difficult, right? This is something that developers have been asking for so long, and it's incredible to see it happening in front of you. There's always this. I'm going to butcher this saying, but big changes happen based on a lot of little incremental steps added together. And as each incremental step happens, you're like, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. But when you look back at the sum total of what the effect is, it's really amazing.
Yeah, and nothing epitomizes that better than I'd say the Nitro system. I think Dave Brown was the one who spoke about it a bit yesterday, but the Nitro system enabled launches like the macOS EC2 instances to become possible with the deeper hardening of isolation and the ability to now have different boundaries for virtualization. Super exciting today. We saw that even further in some of references in Andy's keynote today, which we had a deeper recap. It was about an hour and a half following it, but there were launches in every single service category, right? I don't know what else we would have certainly expected. But if we had to try and summarize that at all, what were we looking at here? I remember distinctly lots of AI and ML launches. I was quite surprised actually, because I know that there's a dedicated AI and ML keynote coming up earlier or later in reInvent, but we saw I'm big on SageMaker, so we saw SageMaker Data Wrangler, SageMaker Feature Store, SageMaker Pipelines. Those are all huge quality of life and true, like, you've gone 0 to 1 with machine learning production. Now you want to scale out and have a more mature pipeline or a set of pipelines for that. If that is anything like what you and your company are doing in the machine learning space, all three of these launches are going to be ones you're going to want to look at today.
Yeah, and just to add to that, kind of, we had a truly staggering lineup of new feature announcements. Just so many exciting things. It's going to be weeks of diving into this for me personally to understand what all the implications are. I mean, one of the things I'm most excited about is the slew of announcements in the compute space, spanning instances to containers to lambdas. Just to give you a really quick highlight, I mean, we have the Graviton 2 processor rolling out with more and more instances launching based on the Graviton 2 processor. We have the new network throughput instance, high throughput instance that is capable of up to 400 gigabits per second of network throughput. Just wrap your head around that number. That's incredible, right? Within the containers space, we have basically improvements to Lambda to be able to run a Docker image. Customers have been asking for this for a long time. Lambda is now moving to 1 millisecond billing intervals, even better and more closely tracing the workflows to make sure that you're paying only for what you use. So massive improvements in the compute space.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of that, the announcement of Amazon ECS Anywhere and Amazon EKS Anywhere, the ability for customers to deploy and self manage ECS and EKS esque services with identical APIs to the production hosted ones here on AWS. And, again, open sourcing those and making those available to the public, something that, many people maybe not would not have expected, but I know that we at AWS are super excited to be able to do. One of the other ones, piggybacking and bridging now AI/ML and compute, which we were just talking about, is the launch of AWS Trainium. Now, again, AWS Inferentia, a chip we launched 2 years ago, and this past year went GA in an Inf1 instance for accelerating inference in machine learning production workloads. We just announced AWS Trainium, an ML training chip custom designed for cost-effective training in the cloud. So custom silicon from AWS, Inferentia dealing with the inference side, which in the long tail of machine learning often becomes the more expensive end. But now AWS Trainium making the cost of training less prohibitive, and I'd imagine opening up sort of the floodgates for more customers to be able to get started with machine learning that otherwise would have been sort of priced out.
Yeah, absolutely. And never far behind is always the improvements that we're announcing in the storage and database spaces with storage. Massive improvements to Elastic Block Storage Service (EBS). We're seeing improvements, just performance and cost improvements across the board for GP2 volumes, GP3 volumes that bring even higher IOPS and throughput. And then our first ever storage area network as a service. We call this Block Express. And what you can do here is basically allocate more storage, more speed, more IOPS on demand, pay for only what you use. This was never possible. And if you've ever had to use a SAN, you know how powerful this is. So that's something that we're going to be adding more and more features to in the near future. And of course, with the databases space, again, full court press. I mean, we have purpose-built databases. We have TimeStream that recently launched. It's a purpose-built time series database, so you don't have to store everything into your relational data store anymore. We continue to see rapid adoption in Aurora, and we made massive improvements to Aurora serverless. So really exciting to see all of the storage and persistence improvements across the board.
Yeah, exactly. People like to say, I loved Amazon S3, but if Amazon S3 was so good, where is Amazon S4? But, S3 was good enough. We didn't need S4, right? You mentioned Aurora Serverless V improvements to it. It's more than improvements. It gets its own name here at Aurora Serverless V2. As someone who had used it and had spoken to customers, I know some of the most resounding feedback was customers love the experience of serverless auto scaling, scale down and up automatically based on traffic. But one of the edge cases that seemed to be challenging was sudden influx and spike in traffic, where it would Aurora Serverless would properly buffer requests and scale up and serve all of those requests, but the scale up time could be on the order of minutes in certain scenarios. And there's obviously ways to manually try and tune that or pre-scale, but then you start getting out of the realm of serverless best practices and methodologies. And so Aurora Serverless V2 essentially says, hey, don't worry about tuning those scaling curves. This should be the area of responsibility of the serverless the serverless service itself in Aurora Serverless. And so now I believe Andy said scaling to hundreds of thousands of transactions in a fraction of a second. So that scaling concern no longer existing for the folks that love the interface of Aurora, but now get to use that or have been using it in a serverless fashion.
Yeah, and that should continue the trend of Aurora being our fastest growing AWS service ever. So I think this really kind of brings home this point that we have a platform of the right tool for the job. Purpose-built tools, purpose-built solutions. Andy had this great set of 8 key principles that you need to observe in order to truly build a culture of innovation, of reinvention. And one of them was this notion of managing complexity, right? Not only is your business domain already complicated enough, you really don't want to have technology make that problem even worse. And it's extremely powerful to not be forced to make those trade-offs of, oh, okay, well, on the one hand, if I stay in SQL Server, I'm simpler because I understand SQL Server. But on the other hand, I'm just accruing technical debt because we're counting down the days until this SQL Server instance falls over because we're putting time series data in it, right? Having these right tools for the job is so powerful because it means that you don't have to make those trade-offs anymore between simplicity and power and flexibility. Um, and I mean, just speaking of some of these customer use cases that you mentioned earlier, Nick, we saw a lot of great testimony from our partners across a whole variety of industries. Um, we saw Lori from JP Morgan Chase. We saw the CTO from Carrier. We heard from the VP of infrastructure from Riot Games. Just this is an acceleration of what we've seen over the last few years, which is that companies across every single industry of every shape and size are realizing the benefits of AWS, and in this unprecedented year, even more so, because it turns out that what the union times we're going through have done is they've really kind of put an emphasis on cloud migration, cost mitigation, agility. But the important thing to keep in mind is kind of doing this on the back foot is going to be challenging and stressful, and really you want to kind of get ahead of that. So cloud migration, hybrid infrastructure, still kind of top of mind themes that we're seeing this year.
Exactly. Yeah. And when thinking about sort of the assumptions that you make for your underlying infrastructure, if you assume that all of your assumptions for your constants will remain so, then there are certain models that or certain decisions that could be made. But I think that it goes without saying that no one could have predicted this past year. And so, to your point, migration to cloud enables companies and developers to have the agility to, whether it's scale up or scale down, whether it is more easily alter the managed services that you're using. Cloud with pay as you go model and being able to elastically scale up or down to demand ultimately offers a level of organizational resiliency that traditional on-prem may not be able to offer, or to be quite frank, does not offer. And in talking with a lot of these customers across a myriad of verticals, I know we saw Andy spoke particularly about automotive, medicine, media and entertainment, and namely industrial manufacturing. And I wanted to call that one out because in our ongoing conversations with customers and collection of feedback, we tried to the best of our ability to help deeply listen and understand their concerns and needs. And while customers may have a given set of skills and developers have preferences naturally for certain pieces of technology, the reality is that the best tool for the job may simply not have been built yet. And I think that there's no better example of that than industrial manufacturing. We talk about undifferentiated heavy lifting, and it would kind of be silly for every single manufacturing company to also need an in-house R&D AIML team to build models from scratch for common problems. And we saw a slew of launches here that should be very exciting. Those namely being Amazon Monotron, an end-to-end equipment monitoring service that does everything from collecting data at the sensor level all the way up to the Monotron app. So sort of a end-to-end monitoring and predictive maintenance tracking tool that can also sort of alert you as to when things could be breaking. We saw Amazon Lookout for Equipment. This is a managed service that's particularly focused on the input from sensors, namely temperature, sound, and vibration, and being able to detect based on our internal algorithms responses and pass inferences as to when these should have predictive maintenance, because predictive maintenance is always cheaper than fixing the results of a broken device or cleaning up after it. Obviously, devices can fail in a large number of terrible ways. And then lastly, trying to make the most of infrastructure that manufacturing companies may already be deploying. We talk a lot about being able to move compute closer where the data may live. There's a number of reasons for that, but largely, eliminating the need for all input devices or sensors to be directly smart themselves. We see Panorama Appliance. This is a physical device that can be deployed on premises in a manufacturing facility to detect traditional feeds like video cameras to be able to empower the manufacturing customer to perform computer vision directly on site without having to completely swap out all of the all of the physical devices that they may already have that are collecting extremely valuable data. So I think this is one of the best of both worlds. You know, you can maintain some of the knowledge and the tools and the investments you've already made, but have the innovations that AWS is making and bring that directly to you.
Yeah, that's a really good call out, Nick. The solutions that we're launching in the industrial and manufacturing space. And one thing I noticed about some of these announcements is the maturity of the AI solutions that are built into them, right? Just taking that industrial IoT solution that you mentioned, where we're monitoring sensors and proactively detecting equipment failure. You know, the way that that works is that it's using a model where it establishes a baseline for what a healthy machine looks like, and if it detects deviation from that, it'll basically alert you and tell you, hey, something might require maintenance. And often what we've heard from customers is that they want these kinds of solutions because it turns out that proactive maintenance is a lot cheaper than reactive maintenance, right? And we see this with another really good example where we see the maturity of these AI powered features is in Amazon Connect, our call center as a service. You know, call centers are a really common piece of infrastructure for companies, especially retail facing companies, but of course, companies of all shapes and sizes. And you know, when we look at the features there, we're seeing features like Wisdom, which allows the agent to have access to all the contextual information that allows them to get to the answer for the customer as quickly as possible and reduce thrashing, reduce regathering information, but basically improve customer experience on behalf of a whole variety of industries.
Exactly. You know, in the same way that manufacturing clients have a treasure trove of data either from their sensors or from physical camera devices that they have on site, calls in a call center are another source of data that is largely difficult to tap. It's intuitive how to tap it. Folks want to be able to get sentiment. They want to be able to easily surface data to their agents based on a customer profile and connect. What we really see here is a purpose built pointed and tactical solution to the call center problem set powered by these tried and true AWS services that have been in production in a myriad of ways for years now. So really excited to see all of those launches from the Connect team. You know, I mentioned before there are reasons you may want your infrastructure on-prem for particular reasons. And for those that do have some of their own on-prem requirements, we certainly had a few exciting launches in that space as too. In that space as well. I remember last year I went and took a picture next to one of the outposts that we had on the floor of the expo hall in the Venetian, and that was quite exciting. It's 80 inches tall. It's this big. I wouldn't call it a monolith because that has other implications, obviously, in software. But it was a unit. It was quite a large device. And this year we saw rack-based solutions in both the 1.75-inch 1U and 3.5-inch 2U options, such that if you have a desire or a need to have some of this compute infrastructure brought closer to the edge, quite literally on premises, Outpost may now have a solution for you. Again, same functionality as default Outpost with some different hardware configurations. So excited to see that. And then another follow on to a launch that we had from last year in AWS local zones. Again, being able to bring edge computing through co-location and partnerships with a number of other, that's wavelength, but AWS local zones with closer sort of region-esque aspects with particular compatibility with certain services to bring end computing closer to where your users may be or where your applications are serving requests from. So the new ones being, again, Boston, Houston, and Miami in preview, with 12 confirmed to be coming in 2021. I'm not going to name the whole list, but I'm from New York City, so seeing one in New York is certainly a nice one there. And I know that many of the folks over in Seattle are probably happy to see that one on the list as well. But again, bringing this, largely the list of 12 is composed of major metropolitan areas where you would be able to then service a large number of end users who are in those respective cities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it's impossible to kind of parse all the information we just dumped on the viewer right now. But if any of that sounded interesting, I think what you should do is definitely explore the session catalog, because that's where we're going to go deep into these different topics. That's where we're going to have experts take you through the details about what it's like to operate these different services in your own production environments, what it's like to apply these solutions to your business and your industry. As well, we have a schedule that I think we're going to talk about, right, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. So if you are here, hi, welcome. You're in the right place. Feel free to bookmark this page because the URL will not be changing here in the conference platform between now and the end of reInvent. And we have a persistent schedule that will be right here on my screen. We have this in a blog post on the AWS News blog, but I figured while you're here, let's walk through that really quickly. So here we see some dates between Tuesday and Friday. We've covered quite a few today. We had Andy Jassy's keynote earlier this day. We had Keynote Worthy, where Rob and I dove deep on all of the launches that Andy spoke about, at least as deep as we can go in about an hour and a half with all of the launches that happened. We then saw a session of Howdy Partner with Cloud Health by VMware. This is my architecture. And here we are now in the English recap for the day. Again, we talked a little bit about AWS Late Night yesterday, a little bit about Andy's keynote and everything that has gone on throughout the day. Right after this, we're actually going to have the certification quiz show and then each of those localized recaps. So if you're just waking up about now or you're just tuning in, the show still does go on. Hopefully, there is something for everyone here in the schedule here. But we see that throughout the night, we'll have recaps in Chinese, Korean, Cantonese, Italian, German, French, Portuguese, and Spanish, all before tomorrow starts back up again for the English stream, where we do a deep dive on Amazon EKS Anywhere. So if you are an English viewer tuning in, I apologize. You're kind of tuning in at the end of today's broadcast, but we'll be live again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. And if you are interested at all in getting in touch with us, we'd love to hear your feedback. You can tweet at us at AWS On Air. It's the name of the channel. So little at AWS On Air. We'll be checking that and responding respectively. But again, Rob, it's only day one of reInvent. I know that's used quite a bit as a bit of a tongue in cheek expression, but it is quite literally day one here at reInvent, and we will be live every week for 3 days a week, all the active days throughout reInvent right here on this page for AWS On Air.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to call out is tomorrow we're not going to have Keynote Worthy, but we will be back with Keynote Worthy at 10 a.m. on Thursday. And then you can see that we have a recurring schedule for the recaps. So we know you have a busy schedule, but if you missed it and you just kind of want to have a real quick digest like what we just gave you for where to look other things up, make sure that you set your calendar, a reminder in your calendar. Either tune into Keynote Worthy, where we're going to give you a digested version of that, or tune into the recap in your favorite language, and that'll give you the 411.
Precisely. Yeah. Again, keynote, no keynote tomorrow, just like Rob said, following up there again on Thursday. But as far as the philosophy for some of our scheduling here, if there's a particular show that you happen to tune into either on purpose or by accident, odds are that show will be airing at a very similar time throughout the multiple days across the various weeks here. Again, this schedule will be updated. There will be some additional context on some of the sessions as launches happen. You see here, we have a session here that has a to be determined name. But again, bookmark this page here on AWS On Air within the reInvent platform. Bookmark this blog post because we will be constantly updating this as the event goes on. And I do believe that there will be on-demand videos and recordings of the live sessions available at the end of each of the 3 weeks. So if there was a particular deep dive session that you were very interested in, or maybe an industry that you are a part of that you were not able to tune into the industry live session for, that should all be available by the end of each week.
Wonderful. Well, I think if you're watching us right now, you may as well stay tuned for the certification quiz show with Zoe. That's going to start in just a minute. So I highly recommend you take a break, grab a glass of water, and enjoy the show.
Awesome. Rob, it's been a real pleasure. Day one in the books here for the English primary session. But again, stay tuned for certification quiz show coming up in just a minute. Otherwise, if you're here for the recaps, enjoy throughout the night, and we will see you again here tomorrow. Thank you again, everyone, for today, and we'll see you all in just a little bit.